This is a Lip Media podcast.
Hello, Lamely. This is the fabulous Adam Richard. Fab to you, and with me is Posh, Philip Lee Curtis. Welcome, darling. Welcome to Me, I Am a Memoir, the meaning of Mariah Carey. Chapter 6 for us. I don't know where we're up to in the book.
I've said chapter 10.
They don't have numbers, so it's just we're up to chapter Dandelion Tea, which is going to be... I should, trigger warning for so many traumatic moments this week.
I have PTSD from reading the chapter.
Oh.
I'm not sure I'm okay. This could get pretty hectic.
This is we thought Mariah had seen some shit up till now, and suddenly we go, oh, I see why Alison hasn't figured in the rest of the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's got her own terrifying chapter. Well, we'll get into that in a moment. But first, as we do every episode, we need to get some me moments.
Me moments. Mariah has filled our cups this week. There's so much happening.
Just imagining Mariah wandering around with a jug, just sloshing it everywhere.
Yes.
It's yeah, you can have that much.
She gives us a cookie, one of Mariah's cookies as well.
Don't even with the cookies. I can't do with the cookies. God. I need the cookies.
She's finally mentioned them on social media, so it's legit.
I know. And our new friend mentioned them. She's eaten a whole box.
Yes, we will get to that, don't you worry. that may be our lead story. All right, so our headlines this week, we have a few. Mariah has played a mini version of Verses with her own songs on Twitter where Almost Home won every round, even the ones that it wasn't eligible for.
Really or not really?
In my head. Andrew Lloyd Webber has danced around with a reindeer dog to All I Want for Christmas Is You, which I can only assume means he's about to, hit up a revival of Jesus Christ Superstar where Mariah plays every single character.
Oh, she would be really good as Judas.
She'd just be good as everything.
That's true.
All of it.
She should play all of them. She can layer her own vocals.
I was going to say, imagine the soundtrack.
By the way, just as a quick sidebar, I finally heard her layered vocals in that last chapter when I listened to the audiobook. Like, oh man, she's gone to town.
Oh my God. It was just because remember at the beginning of this, I was like, she's not really singing. And now I have been proven wrong. I've been blown out of the water. She's like, that's it. I'm going back and re-recording. Now, All I Want for Christmas Is You has returned to number one in the US as well as finally hitting number one in the UK. We're still waiting for it in Oz, but it has been here number one the last 2 years. So I think it probably will. Mariah has also gone on a COVID-safe road trip with Dem Babies.
I saw that in her van.
Yes. And I know it just looks like they just keep watching the Christmas special on repeat. Like, that's the trip. They have a quick wave to Vegas, and then they return to watching the Christmas
Was
special.
that was a sponsored post, wasn't it? Like,
I couldn't quite tell.
Was she selling the van? What was she? What was she flogging? I don't understand.
I have no idea.
It felt like a sponsored post, but I wasn't sure what for.
And I felt like it just ended. I was waiting for more, but nothing happened. Yeah. I would actually love to see an S Club 7 Go Wild style Mariah docu-series where she just goes to random countries and climbs the Great Wall. I can't speak now. The Great Wall of China and just all these random festive things at Christmas
with Dem Babies.
With Dem Babies and tries all these different countries' festive foods.
Yes,
heaven.
And that just ends up only eating her biscuits.
Yes.
For our foreign listeners, biscuits in Australia means cookies. It's a different thing.
Yeah, I know. They probably think we're talking about scones.
I know, yeah. What you call biscuits, we call scones. Well, although they're savoury biscuits.
It's
like
very-
American biscuits are savoury, whereas scones can be savoury or sweet, depending.
Yeah, and we also still have cookies, which are different to biscuits, but they're kind of biscuit adjacent.
Yeah. Well, I just call everything in that aisle a biscuit.
I can't speak because my mouth is too full of eating them.
Of biscuits.
The pub choir and the Queensland Symphony Orchestra have also done a cover of All I Want for Christmas Is You, featuring thousands of singers. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Because I was hoping you hadn't, so that I could really surprise you with the special guest that pops up about a third of the way through. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
The one and only K-Rudd.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was going to say, like, of all the Australians, like, you know, well-known Australians, who do you think would be in it? And you'd probably say, you know, like Delta or someone.
Yeah.
And who do you
Malboy.
think would not be in it? Kevin Rudd.
Kevin Rudd. Former
And
Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know.
I can't call him K-Rudd because he calls himself that on the internet like it's fun.
does he?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, mate, you don't.
See, I
we
just
called
think
you
of,
K-Rudd. You can't
yeah,
jump on it.
that's true. I just, every time I see him, I think of ha 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 from Rove. When he did K-Rudd PM. Kevin Rudd PM.
That was Nick Maxwell. I've been sitting in his chair all week.
Oh, really? Can you tell him? You have to share.
Oh,
my
no, because
amazing
he works
impression.
on The Weekly, and The Weekly had wrapped production when I went down to Melbourne for a week. So I was sitting in his chair. Anyway, it's... I love Nick Maxwell.
It just
He's
said
fun.
Nick on it.
If you want to hear any of Nick Maxwell, he's on a podcast called The Sweetest Plum. There you go. There's a plug for I don't even know if they make it anymore, but just there's old ones out there. You can download
It'll be
those.
somewhere. Yeah. A fan has hung a Mariah ornament on their tree, which Mariah has now seen and declared, "I don't know her."
This is such big news. My sister sent it to me.
It's everywhere. There's an eyebrow in the middle of the face.
Oh,
It
one of
looks
the-
like it's been a little melted.
Oh, one of the eyeballs is like at the wrong height. Have you seen someone has photoshopped a picture of Mariah to look like the ornament?
No, but I need to. Oh my god.
I'll send it to you. It is
Please do.
because you go like, it looks like Mariah, but it's just a bit. Oh, I see. One of her eyes is wrong. Her hair's all in her
Oh my
face. Like,
god.
it's just...
And it gets worse the more you go around it. Like from one angle, you start off going, "Oh, maybe that's not so bad," and
Yeah.
it pans. And you're like,
I just love that Mariah goes, "This is not approved."
yes. No, that's pirate merchandise right there.
Oh, pirate Mariah.
I actually
Pariah.
was I was listening to the podcast Table Manners with Jessie Ware and her mum, which is hilarious. And they get different, you know, celebrities, singers and stuff to talk about, you know, their favorite meals that they've eaten around the world and what would their last meal be and all that. But they had Kylie on and they were talking about, you know, the show that they went to 25 years ago or something in a particular t-shirt, and I think they must have shown Kylie the picture and she goes, "Oh yeah, the pirate merchandise." Yeah, I didn't get paid for that. It was just so like subtle, and then once she'd left they were like, "Oh my god, I was so scared." Yeah, I didn't approve that.
Did
one.
they? Was it in Melbourne? And did they buy it on the bridge on the way home? Like there was a guy.
No, yeah, that is very common. No, they're in England, but yeah, I'm sure it was probably on London Bridge.
You know when you would go to like I remember seeing Kylie. She had like a general admission concert for was it Rhythm of Love? I'm very old. And on the way home, there was there's that bridge over the park as you're leaving the tennis center, and there's just a guy selling the dodgiest t-shirts.
Yes, it still happens. It's like a Melbourne thing.
It is delightful.
But before we get to our huge, super massive lead story, I also believe that you, Fab, have a bit of a Mimi moment that involves an elevator from this week.
An elevator. Well,
Fill in the lamely.
Well, Patricia Karvelis, who hosts Radio National Drive at the ABC, and also she hosts various things on the ABC News on the telly. So whenever she's on the telly, she's always wearing some kind of because she dresses quite sedately in the office, whereas when she's wearing her news clothes, it's always really bright colours. And I bump into her in the lift a lot when I'm working at the ABC on Hard Quiz. And one day she's wearing some fuchsia thing. I was like, "Well, that's a nice dress." She goes, "Oh, I'd never fucking wear this thing." I love it when radio presenters swear. Like, still to this day, it's like, oh, you never swear in real life. But anyway, Pat Scovalis was on her Radio National Drive show. They were playing All I Want for Christmas Is You, and she had like a big 80s vibe t-shirt on, is jumping around, dancing very, very energetically. Yes. And Mariah retweeted it and christened her with Big Christmas Energy. BCE. Mariah has coined big Christmas energy.
When I saw that comment from Mariah, I thought, oh, someone's obviously used it and she's now verifying it. But no. It was not mentioned.
She has coined Big Christmas Energy, and I'm totally into it.
I need to read that book. Mariah's Big Christmas Energy.
Big Christmas Energy. How to pay your way to a decent Christmas.
Now, are we ready for our lead story?
All right, lead story. Bring it on to
a
me.
Very podcast personal Mimi moment for all of us, which is that we have had contact from the second most important person related to this book. The first, of course, being Mariah Carey.
Her Royal Highness, the Mariah of Carey.
But
Sorry.
It was the of Carey that got me. Mariah of Carey. No, we had contact from our very own Michaelangelos Davis.
Yes. I'm sure it's Michaela. I wanted to correct
it. It is. No, it is. So let me take you back. I'll paint a picture, shall I?
Paint a picture.
I was, in bed. There was, fairies and stuff just gathering around my hair, giving me pigtails and whatnot. And I woke up looking angelic. Why did you
let all those people over to your house? How many fairies did you get on Grindr that night?
It's been a long year. But I woke up one morning and I don't have my data or anything on overnight. So I switch it all on when I wake up. And I see that I have an Instagram message. And I mean, I'm very popular. This happens all the time. It never happens. But I kind of saw it and I was half asleep. I didn't really click to what was happening. And as I'm waking up, I thought, oh, yeah, I'll have a look. And I was like, oh, it's actually not on my personal Instagram. It's on our show Instagram.
Oh.
I thought, oh, how exciting. Someone's,
Someone likes the show. They've mentioned it.
How exciting. So I click on, and the name was sort of, there was no capitals. It was just kind of a long name, and I sort of didn't take it on board. But I saw that it was a verified account. And I've kind of had a closer look, and I'm like,
I don't have a verified Instagram account.
No, right? Very fancy. So I have
verified on the other two.
I have nothing. I am not who I say I am. But I was kind of looking, and then I realized that it is Michaela Angela Davis. It's really hard for me to say. I can't. I just want to say Michaelangelos Davis. And it wasn't actually a direct message. She had shared one of our posts, which happened to be the post that I had drawn of her as Michaelangelos Davis.
Oh, yes.
But of course, when I've seen that it's actually her, I've thought, oh, shit. What have we said that is so horrific that she's felt the need to reach out and tell us off? I was like, is she suing us? Is she saying, please stop? Like, you guys are awful. I was really quite nervous. But
my number one concern would be, hey, white people, stop trying to explain our experience to us.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
And I know we try to say this. We have no lived experience in any of these things, any of these race issues, and we are more than happy to, if anyone wants to come on and help us,
please do. I think especially because we started this podcast going, this will be fun, and now we get to this week's chapter and just want to be a puddle on the floor.
Yeah.
But the good news was she was saying how obsessed she was with it. And I was like, oh my God, how exciting. This is so fancy. Oh, what a great way to start my morning. And so I've kind of left it at that. I think I shared her sharing.
Yes.
And then I've gone about my day. A couple of hours later, I look down at my phone and there's more messages.
Oh.
And this time they're direct. I didn't realize there was actually some to my personal Instagram as well as the show one. But I just saw the show one. And it was MAD, as I'm now calling it. I don't want to share everything because obviously there was a presumption of privacy
Yes.
in this conversation. But I can give you the gist, if you will. I'll give you the gist before you give us the gist.
All
of
right,
the
good,
gist.
good.
They're basically asking if one of us had done the artwork, and I said yes. That is I, Posh. And she went on to say that it's genius.
Oh.
Like Mariah, come back from the past. They are so sweet and shady. So at this point, I've lost my mind. She went on to. She pointed out the ATM with the wig as a particular favourite.
The idea with the wig is still one of my faves.
Talking just now, she started listening to the show.
Well,
and said hello, hilarious.
Hello, Michaela or Michael as Angeles Davis.
I know. She may have gotten a few episodes in and go, I'm out.
Yeah, no, I'm out. Now.
I hope not. But no, I think the most exciting
Can't listen to white men anymore.
I think the most exciting thing was that she actually really got what we were doing. Like
cool.
She loved that it was a little bit shady because that is in the spirit of Mariah. You know, Mariah does have a sense of humor.
Very reverent to Her Royal Highness the Mariah.
Oh my goodness! I still can't deal with it. I've been watching The Crown, and now I'm just imagining Mariah turning up and going to Kerry in the same way that Prince Charles went to Wales.
And you know Mariah loves The Crown. She would love that.
Yeah. I think that's her name now. But it was just so lovely. And she was she was so grateful for it and really appreciated us making such an event out of it. And of course, I'm going, oh my God.
I am very, very grateful to her work on this book. And and huge thanks for just kind of giving it, we know Mariah can write. She's a songwriter. But there are some kind of literary touches in this book that I feel, like structurally from a writing point of view that I think have probably come from Ms. Davis. As a writer to another writer, thank you for all of your hard work. It's a pleasure reading it, although we're barely a quarter of the way through.
I know. I also love that you just equated yourself on the same level, like as one writer to another writer.
Well, you keep saying from one singer to another to Mariah.
That's
and
true.
You haven't even got a record.
What are you talking about?
You're like Mariah's mother. Who's going to find you?
I almost do. I'm bouncing now because I'm excited. I almost have a record now that COVID's opening up. But beyond all of this, it got me. I was so excited because, of course,
I've got a book. I'm going to hold it up now because I've got a book.
Yeah, with asses in the title. Makes a lot of sense.
Whatever book I ever wrote eventually was going to have that in the title.
Yeah.
Who knew it would be on sale at Kmart, though?
But hey, at least at Big W, it's next to Mariah. Thanks to
your
me.
local Big W.
Yeah. It's the only one. But what was exciting as well, that Michaela came across it. We hadn't tagged her, and I mean, she could have been hugely offended by my image of her as Michelangelo's David, but she loved it. And that's great because it's all meant with love.
Yes.
But I went on to go down a little bit of a YouTube hole of Michaela just to get to know her separately to Mariah.
Yeah.
And she's fabulous. I got right into all these interviews, and she's just very smart with a great sense of humor. And I'm like, Michaela, you can come on this show anytime you like. Please and thank you.
Oh yeah, please, more than welcome.
Please, especially to tell us off about all the shit we're getting.
Oh yeah, and please explain our terrible mishandling of race issues.
Yes. And
women's issues, and there are many issues we have no idea
everything. About. We're sorry. And I think that brings us to a little bit of a recap of our last chapter. How about a recap? A recap. Would you like a recap?
All right, it's you want a recap? I've got your recap. So the last chapter was A Light of My Life, where Mariah's mother, the opera singer, met a string of increasingly unstable men and dared to compete with teenage Mariah
God.
while singing over Michael Jackson. And in response, decades later, Mariah laid down the tarp and dropped names from Marilyn Monroe to Joan Crawford, Pavarotti, Leontine Price, Oprah, even Claire Huxtable got a mention.
Yes. She should always. Felicia Rashad should always be in every time.
So, there was a lot of vengeful name dropping in response to one caustic comment of "you should wish to be half the singer I am." Well, the gist is Mariah's sister is a piece of work, and this is going to be very, very hard going. We have some very, very confronting images, some really distressing themes, and
when I read the chapter, I had to stop about, I'm going to say 10 times.
Oh, really?
I think I stopped, yeah. Because I was already a little bit just flat when I was reading it. And I think it was a mixture of horror, just reading someone else's experience, in certain spots relating to some of it.
Oh, wow.
And being like, oh, I forgot about that,
From your own life.
Yeah, not to the extremes of this, but certainly similarities. And it just kind of kept getting worse.
Yeah.
That crushing, oh, surely this can't get worse.
I know.
And then it does.
You just kind of like, there are so many close calls with another life for Mariah Carey, like that. You just go, oh my God, and I really relate to that in my own life, but we will find out all about that now because we're going to break it on down. Breaking me on
down. So we start with some lyrics from the song Petals from Rainbow, which
one of my favourite songs.
we might touch on because it does come back up. So maybe we'll touch on that a little more at the end of Breaking Me On Down. I will say one of the things that I did find, one of the few things that I found funny reading this chapter was that I just didn't realise what a dandelion is. Like in my head, it was a different flower.
Did you think it was an actual daisy?
I think I was thinking I think I was thinking of like Snapdragon, or because it's got lion in it. I don't know. But also more than that, I think I called the yellow flowers buttercups, and that's a different flower. I didn't realise that the little yellow flowers are also the white sort of dusty flowers.
Yeah.
I didn't realise just like their second life.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, this is fascinating. I'm learning so much already.
Just about botany.
I thought that was a different word just then.
I do love that we get these touches.
I don't know much about either.
I love that we get these touches. Like last chapter, we learnt the history of racism in Springfield, Illinois. Yep. And this week, we learn the history of interracial marriage and the Loving versus Virginia case in the Supreme Court, which made it legal across the country. Because it was illegal. Like basically, her parents had broken the law by getting married.
Which is just bonkers. It just does. I cannot even fathom any of it.
I know.
Like,
it is. I know. Given the world we live in now, it is completely flabbergasting. So, this is one of the things. Here I go off on one of my weird cul-de-sac tangents. One of the reasons I get really frustrated with people who have know this, know that, know the other to various races on their dating profiles on the internet. I'm like, do you understand you are reinforcing attitudes from, half a century ago where it was on the record books that couldn't happen? You can't say, oh, it's just my preference, because your preference is like, some people can take that as a sign that you want certain people not to be able to participate in this kind of life. So yeah, if you're not into someone, then when that type of person messages you, just go, you're not my type.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the conversation. You don't need to have a list of races with the word no next to it in your dating profile.
and body types and
all of
genders
it. Just you can be polite. You can just be like, oh, look, you're not my type, but, flattered and thanks for the message.
I also think it's incredibly immature to completely, blanket say no to an entire group of people.
An entire race.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm kind of like, not that I'm glad that they're putting it on there, but it does make it very easy to spot the kind of people you don't want to associate with.
That's
true.
Like,
oh, you put that on your profile?
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh, look, you've got great abs, but your head is busted.
So, just very quickly going back to the flower.
Anyway, that's out of the cul-de-sac. Here we come.
So, sort of speaking of the dandelion having the more beautiful and then it being sort of floating away, as Mariah sort of describes it as both beautiful and tragic, but also that it can be a good thing, but it can also be a weed needing to be uprooted and discarded. Basically, this is very much a description of Alison.
Yes.
Saying that she's like the wind, memories like thunder and lightning, where she's exciting but unpredictable. I also love early on how Mariah sort of talks about the family as actually even before she came along as the group of four, but saying how bizarre she finds it to think about her parents being married.
Yeah.
Like it's just some other
Because she was,
thing.
3 when they broke up or something? She was very young.
Yeah. And just hearing a little bit about life before her and that the family of four, as you mentioned, the laws prohibiting interracial marriages and the kids having to say father and mother just to appear more acceptable.
Yeah, to make them seem, like they were an upper class family. So they would. It's just really strange.
And I think she even used the phrase "less disgusting."
Yeah,
like
it's
the neighbor. It's talking about the neighbors throwing raw meat with glass in it to their dogs.
Oh, I know, blowing up the car.
Up. And then things she said that were happening within the family that she probably doesn't even know about.
Yeah,
like it's just as much as we talk about Alison and Morgan. That doesn't erase their experiences.
No, and obviously some terrible things happen to them, and you can see, at the end of the chapter that Mariah obviously has tried really hard over the years to help out in any way she can, but it's just not, one of the weirdest things about this chapter is I hadn't, and, without giving too much away, I hadn't realized the salience of the chapter title until I got to the end of the chapter. And I was like, whoa, that is like, it's not until you go back and like just making these notes now going, oh, I'll just make some notes on this chapter that's got, oh my God, it's called that.
Yeah. And it's not like the fun, like, oh, we're spilling tea kind of reference.
It's dandelion tea for a very different reason. Anyway.
Now, Mariah sort of does establish, a few things. One, that Alison and Morgan both believe that she had it easier than them, which is quite a common occurrence in families with maybe some distance between the ages of siblings.
Is that in your family? Do you have that? Are you the baby?
I am the baby.
By how many years?
Well, there's a gap of 10 between the oldest and about 4.5 between the next one.
Right.
As in between me. There's quite a few of us. But look, I think what I would say is each one of us has our own versions of things that happened. They can be quite different, but I have heard more than once that I had it easier. And I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll tell that to my therapist.
Well, and look, my ex, who, that I had a step monster with, he was the ninth in a family.
Ooh.
So, there were a lot older kids. Even though there were no big gaps, there were still, he was the baby. And, I was talking to my therapist about it once, and she said, one of the problems is all the older siblings think they had it easy because they were the baby, but in reality, the baby is handed off to all these different, people people that they don't realize are not their parents. So they start to see every tall person in the house as some sort of parental figure. And so they're kind of cut loose in a way from having one major parent. So it can be quite a distressing thing in later life to have been the baby of a family where everyone's old enough to look after you on their own.
Yeah.
And as we heard, Morgan was a terrible babysitter. And as we learn in this chapter, Alison is not much better.
No. So there's also, this is kind of the first time that there's been real mention of Alfred Roy's violence toward his children, except for obviously they touched on with Morgan.
Yeah.
But simply with the phrase of, Patricia saying, "This one is mine, you will not beat this one."
Yeah.
Like, that was pretty confronting.
It's very full on.
And not sort of explored too much.
And I guess because she didn't, like, as she says, I didn't know it because I didn't experience it. Like, she was not alone with him that much. Because she was 3 when they broke up. But so obviously there was something that went on that caused both Morgan and Alison to become the people that they've since become. And I think there is a combination of a violent father and also a mother that's not really stepping in to do anything.
And I think the thing that probably shocked me about that particular line was, up until now, really the picture painted of Alfred Roy was quite positive.
Yeah,
just a bit strict. It wasn't perfect. Yeah, and yes, there was violence between Morgan and Alfred, but a lot of that was pointed towards Morgan. Yeah. More than Alfred. And there was obviously the things that happened when he was younger and accusations and things like that. Yeah. But for the most part, it was all quite positive, and she painted quite a warm picture of him with all the cooking and all that sort of stuff. So to kind of then get to this chapter and go, hang on, maybe we don't like this person so much. It's just But
also, I guess we're seeing things through her eyes, and how like all she knows is what she's heard as opposed to what she's seen and what she's experienced.
And I think a lot of that, seeing it through her eyes is the experience of this chapter. Like, you do really feel like you were sitting there in her body almost. That's how I felt. Yeah. Sort of watching it all unfold. Now, she mentions really the only time that they had dinner was what she called a restorative dinner, where, the family were trying to see what, whether they could stay together, basically. Yeah. And Mariah was singing, and Alfred Roy said that children should be seen and not heard, which I think is just ridiculous anyway.
That's what my father used to say that to me all the time.
Really?
Yeah. Ugh. So I honestly believe that most of my noisy performance adult life is making up for lost time.
But just imagine telling Mariah not to sing.
Well, imagine telling me not to be hilarious. Like, seriously, the standing on the coffee table doing a show, I've been there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Mariah decided in that moment, well, I'm going to go into the lounge room and just keep going. Yeah, and sort of the it's described that Patricia sort of gave a look. Yeah, that Roy was not able to stop this. Yeah, but of course Morgan and Alison. It sounded like they were expecting to get in trouble themselves. Like it was going to cause some kind of bigger thing.
Just everyone was going to get hurt because of this.
Yeah.
I was fascinated that she kind of pins it to this moment. She's like, they hate me because I didn't get in trouble for singing on that coffee table. Like, as if they hate her now because of that moment then. Yeah. And it's... Yeah.
Yeah. I certainly think that there is some correlation to maybe some siblings in my family who perhaps felt on the outside and saw me as the golden child and the spoiled one.
Who was allowed to sing on the table.
Who was allowed to sing on the table, and yet they're not me, so they don't know what actually was going on, if that makes sense. Anyway.
And also, but also like, any kind of resentment about that from an older sibling, like even if they're only 10 years older, like when you're 10 years old, a 20-year-old treating you like crap is really devastating. Like, that is hard to get past. Like, that is not...
Especially when that's the family you know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're born into that. That's, to you, that's your normal.
Yeah.
So to then be told within your own family, you're other, you know, or you're more, you got more of this and I am jealous of that, and it's not something you've done. Like, and how do you understand that at 4 or 5 years old?
Just go and yell at my parents, mate.
Yeah.
They're also yours.
Yeah. Now, we sort of pretty quickly get to the part where the parents have decided to divorce. And that legally Morgan and Alfred Roy were not allowed to live together.
Yeah.
There's mention of Morgan going into psychiatric wards, and the quote, "Morgan was a crisis."
Yeah.
That really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because that gave a bit of where Mariah... It almost felt like Mariah unfiltered. Like, because for a lot of this chapter, there was kindness towards the family and the siblings in spots.
And I feel like, you know, as this chapter goes on, what we see is, so, I mean, it's only barely mentioned at the start, but, you know, like, Morgan was a problem, so he had to be dealt with. Mariah was a baby, and so she had to be dealt with, which kind of left Alison ignored. And abandoned and neglected, and you know, feeling worthless is one of those things that can drive you to do horrific things in search of worth. So I totally understand her journey, as awful as it is. I don't condone any of her actions, but I understand how she got to where she did.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes things like, you know, the way Mariah talks about everyone even more tragic, because there is affection in there. There is sympathy. Yeah. There is understanding. Yet, that's not always enough.
No.
She does sort of go on to say that Alison could manipulate a lot of Morgan.
Yeah.
And his outbursts and things like that. Sort of showing that maybe he wasn't super in control of his own issues, and that's sad as well. Now, Morgan and Mariah ended up with Patricia, where Alison ended up with Alfred Roy, and went on later to say that she felt very tossed aside, whereas Patricia has said, well, Alison chose to live with him because she didn't want him to be on his own. And really, both of those things could be true.
Yeah. Both of those things probably are true. It's like, oh, well, I felt like I had no choice but to go to him.
Yeah. Then we learn that Alison turned to sex to sort of get validation at 15. She was pregnant.
All done it.
You got pregnant at 15?
Well, you know, they don't have the equipment for it, but, you know, I'm lucky nothing else happened, to be honest.
Now, Patricia sort of threw out the idea of an abortion, whereas Alfred Roy talked about you should get married and move to the Philippines with this man.
Moving to the Philippines at that age, pregnant, like it's that is basically your family saying you're too much to handle. Get out.
Yeah, that's what she ended up doing.
Yeah.
Mariah mentions the baby shower that she had before she left.
Oh, the creepy cake.
This episode is brought to you by Kate Spade New York.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jess, and we're the hosts of the beauty podcast Fat Mascara.
And we're ready for that summer state of mind. If you're feeling the same, Kate Spade New York is right there with you.
The brand celebrates its 30th anniversary this year, and they're bringing on the summer adventures with a new collection inspired by a day at the beach.
We're loving their Spade Flower Jacquard collection, a classic Kate Spade New York print in new hues. And there's also a lemon novelty collection that adds a little zest to every summer look with timeless bags, breezy dresses, and so much more.
Wherever the season takes you, whether that's Cannes or Coney Island, get ready to look the part. Discover and shop the summer collection at Kate Spade New York.
Right.
Oh, the baby doll on the cake.
Look, they've gotten worse since then. There's now birth cakes but just, with babies and blood.
Yuck. But no, just like, I mean, the Mariah's description of this and her confusion about the fact that it's like, is this a wedding cake? Is this a baby shower cake? Is this a bon voyage cake? Like it's all of these things at once. And, you know, she was a little kid and she didn't even understand the concept of someone gestating a baby, let alone...
No, exactly. There's a baby in there?
This triple...
What do you mean?
This triple-barreled weird going-away party / baby shower / wedding present. It's not okay.
and sort of saying that I think the words were, is it festive or tragic?
Yeah.
Like, which one? I need to know. And all I could think of was her saying, it's bleak, darling.
It's bleak, darling.
Now, this is what ended up having Mariah thinking, well, that must be normal. You know, at 15, you get pregnant, you get married, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And she became quite determined to not make those choices, let's say.
Yeah.
And it led to her becoming quite prudish, which I'm curious about whether that comes up later.
Yeah.
When it comes to her own relationships and things like that. Now, what she has said when Alison returned from the Philippines...
at the age of 20.
She was just different. She was, I've used the word, she was hardened.
Yeah.
Like there was something much sort of tougher. And then whatever happened there led to her bartering with her body for money and drugs, which she did apparently for years to come.
Yeah.
Then we get this story about Alison's older boyfriend in his 60s who... Now, I'm curious about this part from the audiobook because Mariah says that Patricia trusted him. So it was like... But trusted was in italics.
Yeah,
I
think she said him... So she must... Like, because he filled the fridge with food. So she's like, so I guess she trusted him? Like, it's...
Yeah, it was an odd choice. And I thought maybe in the book she was like, trusted? Like, you know... I was like, I need to hear it.
I will tell you, like, this is... as hard as you found this chapter to read... Like, there are a couple of moments in this chapter where when Mariah's reading the story, it sounds like someone reading a story. Like, even though it's about her own life, it sounds like she's reading. Even though she's, doing a great job as an actor of performative reading. But there are a couple of moments in this chapter where her skin gets very thin and you can hear... Like, it's almost like she may have started crying at the end of a passage. And then the very next sentence starts with a more upbeat sound. It's like, oh, they've had to stop recording and start again.
Yeah.
And it's a very raw vocal performance. I don't even want to call it a performance. I think it's just she was very in touch with her emotions that she was feeling again. Like I've been talking about this lately because I wrote a story about a really depressing thing that happened to me about 7 years ago. And
wait, when did you meet me?
Look, it's vaguely related. It's about someone we don't know. Anyway, I was depressed.
Oh, can you send me that?
I will. I was depressed and I was writing about depression and I started feeling it again. And it's like, oh, this isn't actually... I'm not depressed about anything. What I'm having is the physical memory of a depression. Like, you know how a smell will suddenly fill you with a whole... Like, you'll just be like, oh, I remember that time I was at that place and it smelled like this.
Yes.
And the same thing with this. Like, it's like, oh, this feeling, this depressive feeling has just taken me back to that place, that really, awful black hole of a place. And... I honestly think listening to this, Mariah Carey reading this chapter was her just being in that place and feeling that betrayal by someone you trust. Like that, looking back at this with adult eyes, you're like, I thought all these moments were us having fun. And in reality, they were manipulative and awful and... Yeah, it's a really, really... It's probably even harder work as an audiobook than you found it reading as text.
Well, I'm curious now because I will say what you said about, looking at things with adult eyes and the feeling. I think that's, what I referred to before where it was like I was relating to certain things. It was me maybe recognizing for the first time certain things that maybe I had... brushed aside or seen as acceptable at the time that I would no longer see as acceptable, and also remembering actually I was 10 or 9 or 11 and I can't believe that certain people who were older, who should have known better, put me in circumstances that I wouldn't walk into now as an adult. Like, and going, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have to be in that place anymore.
Well, yes.
But
now
also,
you're old enough to be able to say no. This is why, you can't consent below a certain age to anything.
No, exactly.
You can't consent to vote. You can't consent to disclose your private information and where you live. Like, this is why it's, when people want to be on the internet, it's like, well, if you're under a certain age, you don't know that it's a bad idea to tell someone where you live.
Yes, yeah.
Like, it's... So, yeah, it's... I totally understand how you got to that place, and that is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing being forgetting how I felt back then, that I was scared then. It's almost like, you grow up, you have to survive it.
Yeah.
So you just push through. And then I go, well, that makes sense as to why I've had to do so much work as an adult, because those things actually were more traumatic than maybe I've let myself believe.
Yeah.
But then you get, like you said, you sort of get transported back to that place and you go, oh my God, I was terrified.
Yeah. And
I was scared and I thought that was life forever.
And those feelings come back. Like, you can't, like, I guess, it's like in therapy, they always say the only way to get through something is to go through it. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I have to feel that again.
Yeah.
I didn't like that the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And almost forgetting that feeling a little bit, because you had to just to get through.
Yeah, to feel.
And then going,
like
oh no, it's still there. I thought it was out. I just keep thinking someone's going to hear, like, people are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, was it me? And I'll just say, yes, it was definitely me. This is a mixture of different experiences that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. You come from a fairly big family, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could have been all of them and none of them.
Yes, exactly.
Whoever rings and said, was it me? You just go, no, it was the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
Which other one? I'm not saying.
Yeah, no, I can't say.
But you. It was you.
Yeah. Yeah, if I don't pick up your call, it was you. So yes, Alison took Mariah to this guy's house, and for just some reason, it's not even explained, decided it was a great idea to have 12-year-old Mariah have a Valium.
I know. And that description of the Valium just coming on is like, whoa, I have been there.
Now, I have never had a Valium, so I don't know anything about this.
Have you not?
But
no. You're going to throw your back out one time.
I'm surprised I haven't. Now, you've just sort of said you have had one, so could you give me an idea of, as an adult, what that...
Oh, the same as she's
happens?
Explaining. Like, I had the same experience because I was in such agony from my back being out. I had to go to the hospital, the doctor around the corner kind of bent over. By the way, I put my back out sneezing. This is...
It's not the first time you've done that.
The fun of fat people.
Round the corner, bent over.
Frequently been to the doctor bent over. But yeah, I threw my back out sneezing. The horrors of being fat, because it's like constantly working.
I think thin people sneeze, but all right.
No, but because your back is in constant, because of all the weight you're carrying, like your back muscles are working a lot to keep you upright. So yeah, I sneezed and threw my back out. I went to the doctor and they gave me the Valium, and I was in such pain, I misread the dosage. So it was one twice a day. So I took 2. So it was like maybe 1 3 times a day, and I thought it was 3 times. Whatever it was, I took way too many, and was just like, whoa, this is really... It's like, have you ever had a sedative for a medical procedure? Like, rather than an anesthetic, you just have a sedative.
No, I've only had anesthetic, which is heaven.
It's the same kind of thing. You're just like, oh yeah, I feel... Like, it's just everything goes to jelly and you melt into the... Like, her description of it was exactly what happens.
The scariest part is, Mariah had no idea.
Yeah.
And it was just so... here's someone you trust.
Yeah.
Saying, I'll have this.
And also, like, the very next passage, and I know it's not the very next day, but it feels like the very next day.
Yeah.
Is Alison dipping her bloody fingernail into a bag of cocaine and trying to get her to shove it up her nose.
So that's the thing. So as Mariah sort of states, the worst hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So we have what I'm in my head is a montage of Alison helping Mariah with her hair.
Yes.
They're going bra shopping, doing eyebrows. It's very like 80s sitcom. Like, how isn't this fun? Where are sisters?
Yeah.
Or so she thought, as she said.
And all of it, and getting juicy juice boxes
Yes, of course.
at a brothel.
Yeah.
Like when the kind of pull back and reveal that all of this is happening at what is ostensibly a brothel, you're like, oh yeah, then that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's it's such a just from a writing point of view, just that sudden moment of like, oh yeah, no, but we had good times, this and that and that. I mean, sure, it all happened in a brothel, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
no, this is.
But when it's the montage with the happy music, it just seems so wonderful.
No, and yeah,
I love Mariah mentioning that, Alison had a beeper and only drug dealers, rappers and doctors had beepers back then. Then, as you mentioned, we have the scene of Alison offering her a nailful of cocaine.
Yeah.
And I did sort of love the subtle mention of Mariah saying she doesn't know what would have happened if she had it then or ever in my life. Just to very, firmly state that it is not something she has partaken in. The only white powder she enjoys is the snow in the North Pole.
Yeah.
And that is not a euphemism. She's legitimately been there. She sort of goes on to talk about it. It was all a setup, which is her words, and that she still has nightmares about this. So once we got to this part, I was like, oh, okay, that's the worst of it.
Oh, no.
Like, because she's saying she still has nightmares about this time. The rest of it's just going to be, then this happened. Oh, no. Then we get introduced to boyfriend John, who is clearly a pimp. Immediately, it's like, oh, no, he's a pimp. This is my boyfriend, the pimp. And one part of this story, when they're going to what we, believe to be a brothel.
Yes.
Or as Mariah calls it, a whorehouse.
Was Dolly there?
She's
Burt Reynolds?
Now, the thing that really stood out to me, which is not really mentioned much, but as in it's not elaborated on, but Alison tells Mariah not to tell Morgan.
Yeah.
Which is saying he doesn't like John because he beat him at backgammon, which I was like, backgammon?
Backgammon.
But what I thought was interesting, that this indicated that Morgan cared about Mariah and would want her to not be in that situation.
And also that he cared about Alison to some extent.
And Alison, yeah.
Like, this guy's no good, stay away from him. But no.
And yeah. Then we get the parts of Mariah having a private phone line, which, when you first read it, it's like, oh, like a mobile. But it's like, no. It must have been a house
plugged into a wall.
Phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that she would call Mariah, Alison would call Mariah at all hours with suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And this is a lot to put on a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
It's a lot to put on anyone. And, on one hand, it's like, it's good that you would, searching for help, Alison, but maybe not the best place to go.
But I mean, that's also part of that. I'm not saying that she was being manipulative by doing this, but that's part of that pattern of, I feel terrible about who I am. So the only thing I can do is to make someone else like me so that I'm not alone in this place. Like, if I constantly berate her with my depression and my bad choices, and then hopefully she'll make all the same bad choices, and then we can be together in this place, and maybe someone will be worse than me, and I can feel better about myself. Like, I think that's a, simplification of someone's subconscious behavior, but I think that's part of it. It's like, bringing someone down to your level so that you can, get a leg up on top of them and stand up a bit and go, oh, I feel better about myself now that I made someone else worse.
Yeah. But I also think there can be, and maybe this is a projection on my behalf, but I think it can feed back into, no matter what this other younger sibling goes through, oh, I still had it worse.
Yeah.
My life is still worse, don't you forget it. I'm going to make your life hell, but
I'm going to make your life
worse.
hell because, you've had it so easy. So you can fit a bit of this in because I've had a terrible time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, just as we keep going, Alison and John are coming to pick Mariah up, but there is no Alison to be found.
That is not okay.
Then all of a sudden, and of course Mariah had up until this point said she quite liked John, and
even though he had a gun in the front seat,
even though he had a gun, so yeah, she has a gun in the car with her, and they end up going to what she sort of describes as a CD card game where she's basically crouched in the corner while people say
gruesome
horrific
things
things about her that are very wrong and inappropriate. And there were guns there as well.
Yeah.
Because of course, it was a card game. You have to have guns. Then went to a drive-in
Yeah.
where he proceeded to kiss 12-year-old Mariah, which is just the most revolting
He
thing I've ever
sexually
heard.
assaulted her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a place where people are as well, like, you know, and she sort of describes a man who noticed and was horrified and concerned and didn't really even have to do anything for apparently John to take the hint and drive off. But I just I can't even unpack this.
Oh, and then
it's so
like the next scene is the where they're playing chasey, and John's driving around looking for her, and you're like, whoa, like that.
yeah,
is...
and she's like, he's got a gun, like, you know, anything could happen.
I know, like, lucky she had an excuse for hiding behind that house.
Right. If I ever need to hide, I'm just playing chasey.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Mariah's sort of talking about living in fear and not telling anyone.
Yeah.
Which is very common as well, I think. And probably...
Especially when you're the young one and it's someone older than you and you're like, well, I don't want to get them in trouble.
Yeah. And I want them to like me.
Yeah.
Because there are quote-unquote good times.
Yeah. I might not get another Juicy Juice box again.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is where I wrote in my notes before I had, like, as I was writing, as I was reading,
Yeah.
surely this can't get worse.
Oh, yeah, no, it does.
Now, past me is an idiot. Because present me is like, oh, no, it did. We have Ellison coming over for a tea party at Mariah and Patricia's. And Alfred Roy calls, and there's sort of a bit of a, neither of us want to talk to him, like it's going to be serious, all this sort of stuff. But Mariah eventually takes the phone and starts talking to him, and is kind of joking around with Ellison, you know, in a charades kind of style from what was described, while she's trying to talk seriously to the dad. But then Ellison's making throat slit motions, which Mariah said sort of indicated that she didn't want to talk to him or didn't want him to know she was there.
Yeah.
To me, I would have cried and run away. Because that's scary. Like, and because as I wrote...
No, I think she means like this, that kind of like...
Oh, see, I thought like...
You
kinda
thought like
slit your
up
throat.
straight across the throat.
Right,
No, I think she
okay.
meant the hand across the throat, which means, no, cut it off.
Right.
Cut off the call.
Yeah, okay. See, when someone says throat slit motions, I think you're going to cut my throat if I say so.
I saw it as like, no, terminate
No,
the
that
call.
does make more sense. That does make more sense.
Hand waving, throat slit motion.
But basically, aside from the threatening to cut your throat part, it seemed like a bit of a fun exchange between the two.
Yeah, they seem to be playing around.
So Mariah says, you know, she's sort of done speaking to her dad, and oh yeah, Allison's here. Do you want to talk to her? Where, of course, Ellison's quite natural response is to throw her scalding hot tea on Mariah.
Yeah.
Now, again, you just kind of you read that and go, what?
And then the next thing, the doctor is pulling fabric.
Yeah, it
out
sort
of
of
her
takes you
flesh.
through. Yeah. And the quote was, I fucking loved that top. Now it was out of rotation, stuck to my back.
So, can I tell you that this was, in the audiobook, one of those Steel Magnolia moments? So, we've had like this horrific thing that's happened. It's just awful and it's shocking. And then her going, I fucking love that top.
Yeah.
Now it's out of rotation. Like, it was like hit Weezer in in Steel Magnolias, where you're in tears and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on. It's like,
Yeah. You know, I do always say I'm never funnier than when I'm angry.
yeah, it is.
Because acid tongue comes out.
Also because there's just been so much awful stuff up to this point that it's like a little pressure valve to go,
Yeah,
it's
break
okay.
that tension.
And then suddenly we get smacked back to something that I have found hilarious for all these years of Mariah saying, I'm eternally 12.
Mm-hmm.
And her saying, this is why she's eternally 12, because she feels like that was the end of her childhood almost. Like that was...
And that she's sort of frozen in that
Yeah.
moment.
And the scar that didn't grow for weeks. And like, oh,
Yeah.
just...
So Mariah sort of we will touch on that more, but Mariah kind of goes on to describe Ellison as the most brilliant and broken person that she knows, saying that she chose to take up permanent residence in victim land. So I've got the actual quote here of what she said after that, which was, "The promise of her life was squandered in a tragic series of cheap bargains rather than being redeemed through the difficult lifelong work of recovery and rebuilding oneself." She then goes on to touch on future stints in rehab for Ellison that Mariah actually paid for, but that you can't help someone who doesn't realise that they're burning. Again, the burning metaphor being quite literal. She then touches on stories of Ellison and Morgan selling, stories on her continuing to burn her, putting her on the chopping block, and that just honestly the summary of this whole chapter is the sentence, "But when I was 12 years old, my sister drugged me with Valium, offered me a pinky nail full of cocaine, inflicted me with third-degree burns, and tried to sell me out to a pimp." Which very much kind of pulls back to what I was talking about where, Ellison and Morgan had it so bad. Mariah was the golden child who had everything. And then you read that sentence and go, oh, fuck. Because it's almost like her saying, I'm acknowledging Ellison and Morgan's difficulties and horrific things happen to them, but that does not erase this.
And look, the terrible things that have been done to her by both of them, they've learned to do that.
Yes.
From having that done to them. And because their parents weren't doing that to Mariah, they've gone, well, it's our responsibility.
I do think something I might have talked about this, I forget. When early on in sort of my romantic life, when I would have a breakup or something, I thought you had to fight and yell. No. Like if someone breaks up with you or you break up, that in order to move on, there needs to be some kind of huge argument.
Some cathartic screaming.
And yelling and all of this sort of stuff.
You can just scream a song really loudly. Sing No More Drama by Mary J. Blige. That'll get you through it.
I certainly do that. But to me, that was all I knew.
That was normality, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't understand that you could just say, oh, that hurts and that sucks and I'm sad and scream Mary J. Blige in your bedroom, but you don't actually have to scream at the person to move past it or to get to the other side. You can actually get to the other side in other ways.
24/7 drama.
No more drama in my life, thank you. But yes, this is where Mariah sort of wraps up the chapter talking about why she's eternally 12 and saying that she's still struggling with that time and that's why she's in a lot of ways never moved past it. Then we get, the last bit of the chapter is the song Petals, which when you go back and listen to it after this chapter, it's very obvious that at the very least the first verse is about Ellison.
I've always thought Vanishing from the first album was about Ellison as well.
Okay, possibly. But it does seem that there's other people that this song is about. She calls someone Valentine, and there's a few other lyrics that don't seem to relate.
I think one of them is Tommy Mottola.
I think the middle, the second verse might be Tommy, and she talks about a brother and a sister. But a younger brother and sister. So I'm wondering if Petals will make
several appearances.
Yes. So I'm curious and wondering if we'll get those stories in the book.
But
that brings us to...
How are you? Are you okay?
No, I am. I think... I think anyone reading this chapter, you don't quite know how to feel.
No, it's very, very...
I'm fine.
It's very raw and it's very hard work and it does explain a lot about the constant rainbows and butterflies and the perfect Christmases. It's like, I am searching for a place that is not real because the place that is real to me is not somewhere I want to live all the time.
And I think a lot of what was so shocking about this chapter in particular was, number one, we hadn't had much Ellison up until now, but also a lot of the previous chapters, as horrific as some of the things happening in them were, very few things were actually happening to Mariah. it was happening around Mariah. She was affected by it, of course, but it wasn't happening to her specifically.
Yeah.
So to actually now, like I said, you're almost in her shoes. Up until now, you've been watching the chaos, and now you're actually feeling the chaos. So I think the contrast of, going from watching to feeling.
Well, watching her sneak past someone with a shotgun to being fed Valium and being dragged around and molested by a pimp at the age of 12.
And I mean, obviously, that doesn't take away from the previous chapters at all. It just feels more immediate. I think.
It's more visceral. There's seriously, listening to her read this is really difficult. She is obviously, these emotions are still quite raw. Even though it's 14 years ago.
4 months.
4 months ago.
Honestly, I think this chapter is going to stick with me for a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many other people as well. Probably, Mariah herself and MAD.
Yes.
Our best friend. Are we ready for a little Mariah meatiness?
Yes.
Mariah meatiness. All right. So last 2 weeks ago, Light of My Life, we both gave that Infinity. That was my first Infinity. And I'm just in real time checking the Lamleys votes because I accidentally put the hour to the wrong time. So it is still going. But no, it does appear that the Lamley have agreed with us at Infinity. There's a couple that gave it 9 to 10 and even a couple that gave it 1 to 4, which surprised me. But
I guess there's nothing really about Mariah's songs. Oh no, she talked about Pavarotti singing Hero.
She did sing The Art of Letting Go. Yeah. But no, the Lamley agree. And that brings us to this week with Dandelion Tea. I mean, for me personally, this is beyond Infinity.
Yeah.
If I gave Infinity last week, this week was, yes, beyond.
Infinity and a half.
Yes. How about you, Fab?
I'm going with Infinity Plus.
Yep. So, of course, Lamley, you can vote for this on the Twitters.
Yes.
I will post that up during the week. So you can let us know your thoughts on Dandelion
And
Tea.
we'll leave this up for 2 weeks because we all know it's the Christmas this week.
Yes.
Well, everyone's having festive occasions.
It's the remix. The remix. All right. Do you have anything from this week that you think you would have done differently, or Mariah, or anyone else in the
chapter?
There
are so many things. Where do you begin with the 1,000,001 things? And also, the choices Mariah made that I probably would have made differently. I probably would have done all the terrible things.
Sure. Okay.
If they were offered to me, and I did end up doing all the terrible things as I went through life. So, yeah, I think Mariah is in an amazing place that she, even at 12, had the strength of will to go, not that, and not that, and not the other one. The main one, though, I will say, is don't get in a car with someone who you only know through someone else.
Oh, gosh.
Realistically, as a kid, you're always told don't get into cars with strangers. And if Allison's boyfriend turns up without Allison, then you just go, oh, yeah, I'll just wait here for Allison. I'll take you to it. No, I'll wait.
But I think that's what was so sinister about it, is this is someone she liked, who had up until this point treated her really well.
Yeah, I know.
So it's...
I mean, also,
this is what I wrote.
There's a failure of parenting here. Where's God. Patricia?
It's not mentioned.
My
under the remix I wrote, I don't think there's anything you could do differently here. She survived. Yeah. That's all you could do. And that's the honest truth. She did all she could do in those moments at that age. And thankfully, she's okay.
Yeah.
She got through it. Can take that away. Oh, Mariah's lesson. about a little Can Take That Away, Mariah's lesson? What have you learned from
Well, I
Mariah this
have
week?
learned, and through my own experience, that coffee table concerts are always applauded. Sure, there are times when you've had a couple of drinks too many and you think you're 12 and you might go through the coffee table. But
They know you down at the coffee table section at IKEA. Oh, he's back. Had another concert?
I had
Adam?
another
Yes.
concert, yes, thank you.
So I went a little more on the serious side. I think that's just where I was at in this
Yeah,
chapter.
it's really full on.
So what I took away from Mariah was that recovery is a choice.
Yes.
That no matter what cards we're dealt, whether we're offered help or not, which to be very clear, Alison was offered help.
Yes.
The only way to truly recover is to choose to do the work. You know, other people can help you, but it's up to you at the end of
And
the
look,
day.
and some people just want to be a victim. But yeah, it's very full on. There's a lot to take
It's just
away.
fun. I feel like, I don't know, like for anyone listening, I feel like even with everything we've discussed, you know, there's so much more that you could talk about. We've probably said things that aren't right or people won't agree with.
But we're
them.
talking about our own experiences and
Exactly,
our own reading
yeah.
of this text. So if you have something you want to contribute, we would love to hear from you. You can get us on the socials at I am a memoir on the Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook or I am a memoir at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If this has affected you and you are upset, don't forget you can call any of the services wherever you are in Australia. Lifeline is 13 11 14 if you need to talk to someone. But there are plenty of places beyond Blue, lots of places who will be able to talk to you if this has triggered anything in you, like it is. And you know, like, I mean, look at you, Posh. You are living proof that there has been a lot of resonance for things in your own life, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going through the same thing, going, whoa, this book has brought up a lot for me.
Which I was quite shocked by as well, because, you know, it's one of those things, anytime you read something that affects you, it's not always exact.
No.
So, you know, to read that chapter is not to be my exact life at
No.
all. Nor would I compare it to Mariah's in a direct way. It's more just going, you know, bringing up your own traumas or your own times where you have not felt safe with people that you should have felt safe with and things like that.
Speaking of not feeling safe, who do we not know?
Yes, that's exactly where I was going. I literally wrote, I don't know anyone in this chapter.
Yeah, I was like Alison and everyone that came with her.
Yeah. I think, honestly, the only person we know in this chapter is Mariah herself.
Yeah.
Everyone else, no idea.
Yeah. Oh, there was the nice man who wrote down the detail, or seemed to be taking the details of the creepy pedophile
Yes.
in the car next to it.
We know him. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think that brings us to Almost Home, thank God.
Almost home.
At the end of the podcast, baby. Almost there, almost home. You could probably say, but you won't because of copyright. So we are going to be having a little Chrissy break.
Yes, this has been such a monumental episode. I think we need a few weeks to really get our heads around what's happened.
Because we don't know. This could get worse. Like the next chapter.
I know.
So the next chapter we'll do is Detangled and Swept Away. So it is one chapter, just to be clear.
Yes.
And
And is this the last chapter of Wayward Child?
I believe maybe the second last.
Is it? I can't remember.
Sorry,
now.
let me double check.
Oh no, there are two more. You are correct.
Yeah. So we will have a little break over Christmas, but there will be a bit of a festive special dropping on Christmas Day. Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. We won't spoil it, but
It's fairly obvious what it might be.
fun. Yeah. Dum 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 dum. Mr. Sandman.
I'm glad you're singing public domain songs finally.
That's why I switched. But yes, we will be diving into the next chapter, Detangled and Swept Away, in the new year. And we'll keep you updated on all of the socials.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Posh. And thank you, Lamely, and I hope you're okay after this.
Oh, I'm fine. Thank
All
you.
right. Big air kisses, darling. Mwah. Bye, Lamely.
Bye.